And welcome, folks, to the latest, the greatest, the good stuff. It is another episode of the NA podcast. We're hitting it off again. It's fine, that Paladin, to bring you another set of news. And we're like right on the dot. We're in the middle of the maelstrom right now with a bunch of news coming your way. So don't worry about the news. We'll give you guys our awful takes. Pally, what's going on?
Nothing much. I mean, we've only got the major like right around the corner in like 2 weeks. I mean, pick'ems are probably going to come out soon. I'll have a video out on that. But until then, we've got some plans to kind of blow us over. Until then, we've got Blast Showdown on the horizon. There's a lot of stuff that we have to get through and talk about and kind of contextualize, because how are we going to do our pick'ems if we don't actually have some LAN experience before then? So let's get right into it.
Yeah, and I mean, we start off with kind of the headline topic of the week. I think coming this Monday, people were definitely angry on the HLTV forums for good reason, or maybe for worse. We see Vitality claim the #1 spot in the world on the HLTV rankings. Now, as we know how reliable the HLTV rankings are, of course, with Movistar Riders being a top 5 team throughout the last 3 months. But now, here with Vitality, do they deserve this placing? Do we take this at face value?
I think the thing is that at this point, FaZe have not gone deep enough into tournaments, at least in the tournaments prior, and they're not doing it in the cleanest way. So as far as statistics are concerned, they're not going to look the cleanest. They're not going to look like they are kind of the flashiest #1 that there is, but they are winning the games. And I think that's the most important part. The RMR was a 3-0 sweep. However, they did take a lot of overtime beatings to get there. And I think Thorin said it best, that they are probably one of the best clutch teams that we have in the scene right now. And I completely agree. They're not necessarily kind of the best in all roles at the moment, but they are so good as a cohesive unit, and the chemistry that they build off of each other works so well. But in terms of the Vitality thing, hey, look, they're coming off of an EPL win. I think as far as HLTV points are concerned, that's always going to look really good, because you're playing a ton of maps and you're winning a ton of maps. You're going really deep. The bracket is also a little longer than other brackets, and you're beating some good teams to get there. So I think that overall, as of right now, if we have to talk like a numbers game, yeah, I think they deserve it. However, I think if you're looking at it at a more holistic sense, I don't think that you can gift them a #1 just yet, just because they aren't necessarily consistently the most dominant team out there. I think I still have to give it to FaZe. I still have to give it to a Na'Vi, and I still think Vitality can be considered an elite team, but they still have got to earn their title at the tippity top.
You know, I mean, when I look at this, at least the current scene as a state of mind, can you convince yourselves that FaZe and Na'Vi are still the #1 teams in the world? I mean, look at the results in the last 3 months and tell me that is, you know, a #1 team. None of these teams have been dominant enough to really call them a #1 team in the world. They haven't actually, you know, gotten themselves in. I mean, even into the one S-tier event that we've had so far throughout this Pro League, neither of those two teams were even in the grand finals. FaZe has been rocky for them. Na'Vi has been it has been up and down. Of course, we always know that they go into playoff mode, but they couldn't beat Vitality in a straight BO3. In a straight BO3 when the pressure was on. Vitality got the better of them. They're in a they made it to the final. They won. It was, you know, a good event, but I don't think personally, I can't say confidently that boom, FaZe Na'Vi are a top level, like not that they're not top level, but they're like #1 in the world. There is one concrete result that we've had so far this season, and that is Vitality winning Pro League. I'll take it. I'll say they're the best team.
I think I could definitely see where you're coming from. I mean, tangibly, they are very mortal right now, both of these squads, and I think that's an issue for those squads in particular, but it makes the rest of the scene very wide open. And right now, that void that's currently being filled by a squad is Vitality, and it's deservedly so, right? I mean, you look at on paper right now, a lot of these players are kind of on the top of the totem pole when it comes to their respective roles. You think about Apex being lauded as a top IGL in the game right now, rivaling that of Kerrigan. I know that's some bold words, but as of right now, I'm seeing that there's at least a deep enough playbook from Apex that could warrant that. Zonic clearly has put in work to kind of integrate and make this English-speaking roster work. You have Dupree and Magisk, who have surprisingly stepped it up, and maybe it's just because they've gotten a little bit more structure now. Spinks in the roster, but like you talk about second and third stars, and they're right up there. Obviously, Zywoo with his superstar performances as well. So yeah, you could definitely make a case for it. To me, I think that I don't consider EPL an S tier tournament, and that's just because I don't like the format and I don't like how the seeding is distributed on the bracket, and I think that's a qualm for another time. However, I do think that this Vitality win is still big, and I can see why you would consider them to be a number one team right now. I'm not gonna go all the way though.
You're just gonna like lock me out of conversation and call EPL a non-S tier event? I mean, okay, there's probably good reason for that. It wasn't in front of a big crowd. It wasn't really in a big arena. I don't think the stakes really felt too much by the players. They're just kind of in Malta vibing out for a month.
It just took forever, man. It took forever, and like, yeah, Vitality wanted it more, but at the same time, if you're a FaZe or Na'Vi, you don't feel that big pressure of the crowd behind you. And for teams like them, that kind of propels you. That makes you play even better than they usually do. And I think that that's not what this setting was. And even at the RMR, you could sort of start to see when they get into these overtimes, they feel a lot more comfortable to get settled into things and to kind of win out those overtimes, get those clutches, and then the blood starts to flow a little bit more. And I think that's why I don't feel that same kind of stakes when I look at the EPL in particular.
I know what you mean. Like in terms of like that event as a whole for Vitality, the top teams, Na'Vi had like a 3-week break from when they played their groups and then went into playoffs. I can kind of see your point there. In that it doesn't feel like one comprehensive tournament for like the top teams. FaZe Clan had to wait 2 weeks to play in the grand finals. Believe it or not, it's only been 2 weeks since the Pro League grand finals. Only 2. Anyways, but I think we do need to move things down the stretch. Look, as much as I want to complain about Na'Vi and FaZe Clan, there are other things that are on the horizon in this show. And as much as I love hating on French people, we'll go on to the next. ENCE taking this one away. They had a decent showing at Rotterdam. Do we expect anything out of them? Are they back?
I don't think they're back yet, but they did show a lot of potential, and I think that's the biggest thing about this ENCE roster. They kind of smacked around Heat at the beginning of EPL, and then they just said, okay, we're out. That's all we're going to show for you guys.
And
they lost to America. I mean, come on, guys. America, really?
Yeah.
But, I mean, but realistically, right, it still didn't make any sense to me that ENCE didn't show enough out of the gates. However, at Rotterdam, I saw a little bit more resiliency. It was very shaky, but I started to see Sun Pius be a little bit more confident on the AWP, which is super important to me. I still don't think Valde is still completely up to snuff yet. I want a little bit more from him, but those two players are kind of where I'm looking at the most. Obviously, Modern and Diha are kind of the rocks for this roster, and you can start to see that they're getting a little bit more comfortable with Diha, kind of taking center stage of getting better statistics, so to speak. But you could start to see that they dispatched of any team that was kind of inferior to them. But as soon as they played a more tenured roster like Outsiders, they just completely fell apart, right? Like they just didn't look like the better squad just because their fundamentals aren't sharp enough just yet. I think the individuals are there, and that's what I've discussed prior when I talked about Valde in my video, but I haven't necessarily seen that cohesion that made the original ENCE roster so great. And when I say original, I mean the original international roster that peaked at number 3 or 2, I believe. So
yeah,
I think that you could say this is one for the future that they could eclipse their ceiling, but as of right now, it's still that slow road to recovery back to the top.
Yeah, I don't really know where to put this ENCE unit. On the one hand, the loss to Outsiders is reasonable. They're our next topic in this slew of names on the right side of your screen. I think they faced off against more formidable competition that you might expect out of a Challenger series. Maybe ENCE deals some damage, but I think I want to just immediately, like, are you down to transition this point over to the Outsiders? You down?
Yeah, we might as well. I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, because I think the Outsiders as a whole are playing some some very tier 1 level Counter-Strike. I understand. You'll look on paper at the RMR and you'll say they went 3-2, but they had the toughest road to get their way into that major. They had to haul it, and they looked great doing it. All things said, I want to actually run it back and give exactly what those lineups were. Hey, we can even bring in one of our features here. We'll go ahead and run it really quickly. We'll go ahead and check in what those ones were. Yeah, they had to play against Natus Vincer, and then an OG that were looking in, all right form, and then they blew Falcons out of the water. Like this unit is perfectly reasonable. And I don't think that should take away from ENCE's performances so far. I just want to expect, I personally expect more out of this Outsiders team. Not only what it's been at Pro League, the RMR, and now Rotterdam. Not only Pro League, but the Rotterdam kind of adding to that. I starting to get a little hyped for this lineup, may I say.
They're the real world where they can sneak all the way to the champion stage. I'm going to say that right now. I think they'll very comfortably get through the challenger stage. And then when it gets to those legend stage, look, man, the scene is completely in flux. There is no G2 again. There's 3 kind of guaranteed slots in my eyes where FaZe, Na'Vi, and Vitality. But that is where I think the qualms end. And you can kind of say any team there can be dethroned by a team like Outsiders. They are just so constrictive right now. James has shown that he can bring 2 or 3 rosters into the limelight now throughout his tenure in both Outsiders, VPN, Avant-Garde. And now, at this point, I mean, this one is probably one of the most exciting rosters. I know it's not necessarily explosive on the server, but they just do things so well by the book that it's made for some really exciting Counter-Strike, and it's caught out some rosters that you think are higher ranking per se, but as of right now, they don't necessarily have the best fundamentals. And the team that I'm talking about here is MOUZ, and I think that roster as a whole, overcoming them, it really made me see that, look, Outsiders right now are fundamentally the better squad, and I don't think that MOUZ is up to snuff just yet.
Yeah, I think so. MOUZ as a whole, they showed up to that event and they didn't accomplish much more than anyone really thought they would. The MOUZ team has received so much hype. They've made themselves some decent spots inside of Pro League where they just, got the top of their group and then got crushed by Liquid, and then followed that up with a middling performance at the RMR where they literally almost lost to Sangal. In fact, I think Sangal deserved that victory, but we'll get into that maybe down the stretch when we talk about some of their players. MOUZ are really struggling to make a case. I understand it's all young players. This is the core of MOUZ NXT just from last year, believe it or not, these group of players. But, I mean, you have to cement yourself into the scene one way or the other. It has to start soon. And it may have to be at the major. They barely squeaked through, no pun intended.
This is the problem. When you have like a full NXT roster just being slid up to the main roster, and this is why I had such a big issue when NBK was out of the roster. I don't constitute Dexter as a veteran. I really don't. Playing AU Counter-Strike is and going to every tier 1 tournament and bombing out in last place is not an experience in my book. And I think that this lineup is going to always struggle when it comes to pressure situations just because they just don't have enough under their belt and they don't have a player to rally behind. I don't think Frozen is that player either just yet, maybe in a year or two's time, but not yet in my eyes. And I think that they are going to get exposed when it comes to the challenger stage because now I don't think that there's any excuse for them in terms of kind of match readiness, but I think that there are better rosters here that if you get down, I'm assuming they're going to be one of those 2-2 side bracket teams, and I think when it gets to that point, they're going to be put through the ringer, and I don't think that they're going to come out on top. I think MOUZ is a fraudulent team as of right now, and I think that there's going to be a lot left to be desired. And actually, yeah, this is a great thing to pull up here,
irony,
because that is their number 1 round matchup here for the challenger stage.
Yeah, for those who are maybe listening on audio or just having this play on the background, MOUZ is playing against Outsiders in the first round. of
first game of the entire
challenge,
tournament,
first
actually.
game of the entire. Is it the opening match? Is
Yeah, it
really?
is.
Yeah, as the opening match of the entire major, MOUZ is playing against Outsiders. That's going to be a banger game that I think you all should definitely tune into. But that'll be in a couple of weeks. We'll have some more time to hype that one up. And that's going to do it for the rundown. We actually made it through all... Oh, we didn't actually make it through all our topics this time around. We'll hit on to the Spirit speed run of the Flow Fire League finals. They got invited, and they kind of won. Maybe we'll hop into that if we like it or not. But now we move on to the greatest region on planet Earth. It's North America. They're not that good at Counter-Strike, but they're sure darn great as everything else, right, guys? All right, let's continue. Because in our region, so to speak, in the Americas, we have one of the weirdest roster moves that I think anyone has ever seen out of any team. A coach... No, a manager. He's the manager of managers. He's the co-owner of Furia. He will now be coaching them for the major instead of Tacitus standing behind him. I think some facts here to put in front of you. He has no prior coaching experience maybe in poker, but no tactical knowledge of Counter-Strike. He's a poker player. He is 47 years old. Paladin?
I think the goofiest thing about this is like when you go to HLTV and they pull up the article, it's like a photo of like Que Serrato and art, and like this guy's like in the background, and like he just like lurking there. And I think that's pretty much sums up exactly what I think that he's gonna do. I think he's just gonna lurk in the background. He'll be walking behind.
He's gonna pull the FNX.
He's gonna pull a straight FNX. He's not gonna say an absolute word during the timeouts. And I can't fathom why they're doing this. I mean, in my eyes, this is like an all hands on deck situation. This is your prime time as an organization to surprise the entire world and come up with a result unlike any other. I made a podcast talking about the impact of home crowds and how Brazil actually struggles to play in Brazil. And I think that holds true. But if there's any team that I think can buck trends, is a team that has been bucking trends in the Brazilian region since their inception, and that's Furia. And I think that they should be having Tacitus behind them, because this is that opportunity where you can chime in with strategy to level off these more inexperienced players who haven't been able to play in deep playoff situations. And in their hometown, you need players and coaches to be behind. And if you're not going to have Gary, then you can have Tacitus. I think he can definitely do that. Not this guy. I don't think that this guy's going to do anything. This guy doesn't have any inherent knowledge of the game. And sure, you can go with the approach that he'll be like the cheerleader of some sorts, where they kind of like rile the troops up and make sure that they can have like the like the latest and greatest motivation to play in these games. But I don't think that this guy is going to even have that capabilities as well. Other than like, hey man, if you don't win this, you're gonna get kicked or something. Like, that's all I can see.
So okay, I'll take the devil's advocate approach. So they have to be very serious about this. First things first, there's a roster lock when it comes to a major, right? So it's not like, oh god, Andre Akari, he didn't really turn out that good. Dang. Please, Valve. Oh, please, I pray to Gaben. I'll buy some cases. I don't know. Can we please swap back in Tacitus? The answer to that question will be no. While Tacitus is able to work behind the scenes and help them, he will not be on stage with them. Which, okay, maybe that's reasonable, because Tacitus has no experience in front of massive crowds, especially. Yeah. And this is Gary's orders.
I will say Stockholm and Antwerp, right? They did qualify for the playoffs.
But this is nothing compared to that. Let's be honest. Let's be real here. You're not even a home crowd. You weren't even close to being a home crowd team back in Stockholm and Antwerp. This is in front of all of Brazil. This is your country's hope in their major. I think Andre Akari, having a much more mature person behind the players, and I think someone who knows how to navigate high pressure situations, it might be good for the playoffs. But first things first, they need to get through the group stage.
And I don't. I mean, they can probably. I mean, what no, they're not legends this year, right?
No.
So they have to go through the challenger stage. I think they should handle that no problem. But the legend stage will be difficult. It will be difficult, and the it does get a little bit easier in the sense that like the crowd gets bigger, right? Like after we go to the next stage, it'll be like a different venue every time. So that legend stage, it could be a little easier to slot in Andre Akari, but I don't know, man. The gut feeling out of the gates for me is that this is not going to end well. Obviously, we'll never inherently know what the full effects of this guy is, but we can make an inference based off of the player body language and just the vibes of the team throughout Rio. So keep an eye out on this, I think, for sure, because this is going to be a very interesting one.
Yeah, are they crazy? I'm not necessarily sure. But we'll go ahead and move on to the craziest move, but it's in a good way, folks, because YEKINDAR has officially been signed to Team Liquid. That is official. We were going to talk about as he should join. No, that's the news, folks. We're right on time. Right before we were about to record, this came out. Will YEKINDAR's Liquid be a title contender? Are they already? Of course, maybe you can say that they already are a title contender, but this unit hasn't quite, I haven't been sold by it, at least right now. The games, they've been tough. They've been close. They have not been clean nor dominant. Do you believe in them, Pally?
I believe in them to make playoffs. I think that they can make the playoffs of the major, and that might be bold just because of how they actually made it through the EPL bracket. It wasn't necessarily the prettiest, and it also wasn't against the best opposition. But at the same time, when this team is on fire, they are absolutely you can't touch them. I think when you've got OC, especially, I think that is the main man that I want to talk about, and that is OC. I've talked about it in a numerous number of podcasts that this team lives and dies through his success. I think YEKINDAR has been doing his job. I think he has been able to. Oh hi, he has been able to give enough information to the Liquid boys on how to play a little bit more of a European style of Counter-Strike, and it has been working very, very well for them. And I think that this team could do very well. You give it a little bit more time, hey, maybe this could work out. But I'm saying that playoffs is kind of like a must, the way I see it for Liquid.
I need to let my cat out.
Okay, I can keep rambling here. Let's keep going.
You don't have to keep rambling. You can just wait here while I have to drag my cat out of my garage. So I'll be right back.
This is never before seen scenes in the NA podcast. But I will say that the core of this team is destined for great things, and then slotting in YEKINDAR into that as well is super exciting. I know the qualms are with OC, and I think that's where I have my most qualms with them as well. But hopefully he can get it together. But hopefully he can get a little bit more experience at the top level, that it isn't an issue. But overall, I am a like almost thumbs up on Liquid.
I kicked my cat out of my garage, and now I can give my take on this situation. No, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this Team Liquid team is consistent enough to do it.
I think they're a piece away, don't you think?
I think they are a piece away. I couldn't tell you which piece, but it just doesn't feel like it's there. It feels like it's so stressful. Like they're just holding together a nuclear reactor with their hands, and at any moment it can explode. There is a real chance that this Liquid could crash out of Rio. I don't see the consistency in the team. I see the individuals having good performances. I see very rough scenes out of the team dynamic. I see one person in our chat says they need an elite opper. I mean, OC is literally the best thing you're gonna get, and to be honest, the way they use OC is not like a lot of other teams. While he is up and down, I'll say that. He's much more passive. He's less of a playmaking opper. He's a Team Liquid opper. They've never had a primary opper in their systems in the first place. So I don't ever think OC is going to like pop off like that, but like you need someone different. You need a bigger playmaker, someone who wants to take the step forward and just go YOLO. I don't know. I think overtime is going to have to, I mean, we had big news to talk about a long time to go through it. Overtime will cover all the North American ECL stuff that's up and coming to see who's going to be making it to the conference and making it out of NA. Any final words on this, Pally?
Yeah, I think if they had to take an EU opper, I mean, again, I say they have to take an EU opper. I don't think there's anybody else in NA right now that is up to snuff or have done enough of their time to suggest that. And if they have to pick an EU opper, I think the only real option right now is Mantu, and I don't know whether or not they would be willing to do that.
I think OC's better than Montu. I'll keep that a stack. Heading on to the next, though, as we dive into everyone's favorite segment. Yours, I know it's mine, and you guys might not know it yet, but it will be your favorite segment of this show. It's NA or EU, where we take all our little bits and bobs of news that isn't drama filled and assassinating someone's character, and instead we take all that and just put it into NA or EU. Nothing good, nothing bad about that, folks. It's good, family-friendly fun. 10 minutes of this stuff, and we're starting this one off with Entropic transfer listing their unit. Is this NA or EU, Pally?
I'm gonna go with EU here. It really sucks that this team had to be transfer listed, and I think that the main thing about this roster is that they had so much potential and none of it could be actually redeemed. And obviously, the Alien move made the most sense just in terms of kind of the form that he was showing. It wasn't necessarily up to stuff. He felt like a real shadow of himself. He was the biggest part of that about him was that he was never able to deliver on tier 1, but he was always able to deliver in tier 2. But he wasn't able to do that either. So it made sense to bring in Anarquez, try different stand-in situations and all that. But the main issue is that you've got Mir on this squad and you're still not able to succeed. It felt like that was the one move that they needed. But honestly, he felt more like a liability, even though he's getting his numbers. It didn't feel like he was actually doing enough justice for the Entropic idea, and that like different lurky style play wasn't necessarily something that they wanted. And Lackey was really keeping this team together.
Yeah.
At the end of all of it, that's what I get out of it. That Lackey was super important.
I mean, I know when Mir is on the market, you just say like, I just want an instant upgrade on a player. But Lackey's roles in that team, he's just a straight entry fragger for that group of guys. He does all the hard roles for the team. And I mean, he was laughing to the bank when he made it to the major or made it to the RMR rather over his brethren. It's Lackey was the real glue to this team. Now they have to boot out Alien. They try to raise their ceiling, but it came crashing down. I mean, pretty EU on this. I think they also need to rejig their lineup.
Another big thing is that now you have a potential of allowing players like Forrester, players like Nickelback, who are pretty hot commodities, I'd say, in the scene right now.
Nickelback, yeah.
And so they could go on to greater things. Also, at the same time, Entropic now is an open org, and potential funding for another big team is on the horizon. So look out for that. And I think that all those feel like just generally that this is a net positive and a good direction to head in.
Oh, the utilitarian point of view. Everyone's happier with Entropic gone, I guess, or whatever that is.
Also Hooch. Hooch is also super important.
Free Hooch.
That guy's fantastic.
Save my boy. Pick him up. He's funny. He's funny. Pick him up. Anyways, moving on to the next. We'll go on to this wondrous piece of news, I guess. You know, if this was in like 2018, this would be like maybe or 2019, this would be like, okay, wow, this is a very solid move. Thomas, Spitty, and Lord are going to Calvana. I'll just say it, NARU.
I think it's crazy that absolutely zero people will be fragging on this team. Like, there's going to be like negative firepower on this squad.
I want to actually find out how old the average age of this lineup is 26.6.
One of the biggest issues that I had with Koana when I saw them at conference is that genuinely they had zero firepower. They would like have all these like crazy reads, but like none of their players would actually hit the necessary shots, so it would just collapse every time. And this is not going to make it any easier. I think this team is dead in the water. They have signed some absolute cretins onto their squad, and I think this team is going to go nowhere. I don't think they're going to win Meisterschaft anytime soon. In fact, the last one that they got was honestly it was like a make a wish sort of situation where Sprout actually took the spot because they won ECL or something like that. And Kawana got the spot because they came in second.
And they got and for the record, in that series, Sprout just slam dunked.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes. So NA, dude, this is honestly it's EU in a way because it'll be goofy as hell to watch these guys play. But I will just go and say NA for the more yes, analyst approach. Yes.
Yes. From a non-analyst perspective, this is like an EG tier roster move. Fucking NA, dude. What? What on earth, dude? I mean, the only player that I see as good on this team is Stefan, and he's like the one player that they kept. I mean, I think he's always been decent, but he's been getting older, folks. He's getting up there. I mean, I remember him playing on alternate attacks during the beginning of the COVID era, and he was an incredibly solid anchor player, but never actually took his services out to, wherever. So that's I never grew out of the team. So he's kind of stayed, he's played, he's been all right, but it's never turned out to be much. And trying this, you're damn right. You hit it on the noggin there. We've been shouting at Kawana a little bit too much. We got to run through some extra news here. Fours bench Kenzie in Norway. Expected, unexpected. NA or EU.
I'm gonna go NA here. Look, obviously the Force roster wasn't actually working out to the best of its extent, right? Like they were near qualification for the Legends stage at the major of the previous one against Imperial, if I'm correct on saying that. And then beyond that, they haven't actually been able to crack that solution. And I think the easiest way to do that is through results and getting to those situations, but they weren't even getting to those situations. And to me, I think that the main issue is that they just needed more time. They need more experience. And I think they weren't able to be granted that like the previous original Fours iteration had. And I think that they're given an unfair situation. And I don't think that necessarily Kenzie and Norway are to be blamed per se. Maybe there are better options out there. And I hope that they make a better decision off of it. But I think that these two pieces are still pretty good.
I think that, these players can definitely find a home in the near future. I think they're fine, but it really is the mixture, because I feel like Fours, it's like this team's brand is that they always have a team that can almost do it, and then they don't. I mean, I love the team and the decision that they made to pick up a bunch of very young, very untested players and actually elevate them to the next stage. Who the hell heard of Shalfie before Fours? Or, I mean, Kenzie or Norvey. I mean, the most Norvey played was like on freaking Trident, which is like, who remembers that? So, Fours took a gamble. They developed these players. I mean, as a business decision, this isn't bad. You bench some decent players. You might be able to sell them. I'm plugging in the EU on this one. I think it's perfectly fine. I think you pick EU as well. I'm not sure. Or
I went NA just because sure. It's a bummer that they didn't get enough time.
Of course.
But yeah, keeping Zorte, keeping Shalfie, those two players are studs. So I will say that I can see an EU here as well.
Let's move it down the stretch. K23, XE Power and Finnegan head out. NA or EU? I'm just going to plug in my answer.
I don't care. I mean, XE Power is just such a whatever player. Finnegan has been floating around the Espada region tier team for ages. K23 were the most whatever squad at the RMR. I don't care. I'm not even going to give you a rating.
What a calamity that XE Power just like fell from. I think in 2020 he was en route to being a top 20 player in the world, and then he's fallen down every single rung on the ladder. I don't think his hopping style is good.
It's so dependent on individual skill, right? It has nothing to do with actual positioning.
It's also about what the other four players on his team. He's a bit of a baity opper, is what I'll say.
Right.
It's about like him finding easy positioning based on what the rest of his team is doing, which is he's not Opera that really plays with the team that much. So, yeah, I think it's perfectly reasonable. We're heading down the edge of the stretch, but I just want to go ahead and just take these last two away. Note the no thanks incident. NA or there's no NA to this. Can only be
Oh,
EU.
this is a hell yeah EU play, man. Chad, These are the real Giga Chads, huh? No Giga Chad Hooksy. It's Giga Chad Sprout for saying something like this publicly. Because my God, I don't want to see Stair leave this team.
Not at
I
all.
don't want him to just
Not
burn
to
away his
Astralis.
career.
Not
yeah.
to Astralis, baby.
Maybe to another Danish team, but not this one, man.
You know, I can't believe how like Astralis used to really just be like the anglerfish, where they would just wave a light and then a Danish talent would go in, boom. I think people have removed that illusion. I remember there's like people's like, oh, it's so great to play underneath the Astralis name, man, such a legendary organization in Denmark. Now that luster has certainly been lost in these last 2 years. I mean, respect to Sprout and respect to Stair. Go off, Sprout. Make the champion stage. You guys are legends for a reason. And NIP come through with a very surprising result there at the Svenska Cup. With teams like the Lil Mix and the Eyeballers in attendance. NIP take down Swedish legends. Only, you know, I mean, some could say that Eyeballer series is very close. It was 16-6, both maps. What do you think about this one, Paladin?
I expected more from them. I expected more. I mean,
you expected 16 zeros?
Yeah, come on, man. I mean, in all honesty, though, it is just cool to see that the roster is working, gaining more experience. This is the kind of stuff that you want to build on the momentum that you showed at the RMRs as well. I'm still not sold on the Res AWP, but if this is the opportunity for him to get a little bit more comfortable, then hey, so be it. I'm just gonna go EU just because. Look, I'm happy that NIP is trying to do something, and they're trying to become a legendary team once again. I think they're still a far cry from it, but hey, credit to them trying.
Vroom vroom. Let's go ahead and keep it going as we have ourselves the recap or the preview. It's through the looking glass. We're gonna be taking a look at the Blast Showdown that is coming up in the next couple of days to see who's going to be making it to the fall finals. Also, a very important ramp up to the major. Yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and roll this one off.
I will tell you one thing, right?
Yeah.
The thing about the Showdown is this could be a huge bait for people. I will tell you that I believe, I don't know if it was the last major or the one before. Problem is that are both PGL majors, so my head gets like mixed up. But
go on.
I think I'm talking about G2 basically bombing out of their Showdown, and then going subsequently 3-0 in their next major stage whenever they actually came out swinging. So I don't think that everybody should give this too much credence. However, right after the major is the fall finals, so this is still a big event in terms of some of these squads having to get it done. And we'll start with Vitality in the European side of things, because you look at the actual field here, and I think the only other teams that I can start to make an argument is Big, Heroic, and maybe a Sangal here. Fly, what do you think?
I mean, I'm just going to say, well, for G2, lucky them. They don't have to play the Showdown or the major for that matter.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
Sorry, I had to jump in there and hit him with the roast.
You have to.
I don't think any who will be able to touch Vitality. Well, I'll go ahead and pull up the bracket at the moment. I believe for their opening matchup, they're playing Tyloo,
which is their first ever official with their 2 new members. So don't expect too much from that. I don't think Arispe or was it Aristo? I always mess it up. But Aristo, I don't think he's ever played a tier 2. I don't even think he's played a tier 2 European tournament ever in his entire career. So this is going to be a fun way to just throw him out onto the deep end.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the rest of Tyloo, I mean, again, well, they're individually capable. Are they going to beat the #1 team in the world? Well, I mean, I think Tyloo have gotten a bit used to this sort of situation where they go out to international events just to get pulverized. We'll see if they can do that against Vitality. Absolutely not. On their side, I mean, I'm gonna be honest here. It's just gonna be Vitality heroic, isn't it? We'll go ahead and I can bring up the bracket on your screen, and I'll say that. Yeah, this bracket's looking pretty Vitality heroic, if you ask me.
I think the most competitive will definitely be that quarterfinal between Big and Sangal. Just because it is online, there should be no excuses for Sangal to at least just feel a little bit more comfortable. They've taken down a big-esque caliber of team in Fnatic to actually get here.
Yeah.
So I think there's a capability of an upset. However, it is still going to be very difficult. I think Big are one of the better teams at dispatching of lower-tiered competition as opposed to other teams around their level. So that's why I think I'm going to take Big to go all the way through. However, I think that there is room for some errors to be made throughout the bracket for sure.
Yeah, I think this is by far and away the most competitive one. I mean, Eternal Fire. I'm gonna be honest here. I wonder what the betting lines are like on this game because I favor Eternal Fire over Astralis at this rate, dude.
Yeah.
Even with like Paz in the lineup, I mean, it wasn't a great performance at Rotterdam from Eternal Fire, all things said. I believe they pushed to quarters, and I mean, shoot, taking a map off of ENCE is no easy feat. With Xfloud back in, I'm happy. With Paz back in, I'm not so sure. I'll go back and forth on that one. But I don't think anyone's really here to even come close to Vitality in this event. I think that kind of states it. I'll be interested to see what Heroic can do.
Let's talk about the North American bracket though, because I think that one is a lot more interesting than the European one. Because although Complexity are the quote-unquote favorites, there are a lot of roads and roadblocks to overcome here in this tournament. You've got MIBR, who, yeah, sure, they didn't qualify for the majors. They look pretty disappointing at the RMR, all things said. But you never know with that roster. They can turn it up to 11 whenever they want to. You've got Team 1, who are still on the fringes. You got another opportunity for Mobs and Pesa to perform. You've got EG who are legends, or sorry, not legends. They are close to being legends against Liquid. So that's also super interesting. You got Fluxo having another opportunity at a Tier 1 tournament. And then 0-0 Nation as well. Like, what's to say who to who actually wins this tournament? Because I don't think Complexity is going to have an easy walk in the park here.
Okay, well, I'll take that statement and say Complexity will body everyone until the finals. This other side of the bracket is extremely close. I don't know what kind of damage Fluxo can do to EG. I have not been fully sold that EG are what they are. They played well on LAN. I'll give them that. But they had a competitive series against Team Liquid. I haven't been fully sold, and I think Fluxo can pop off.
I think the main thing is that it comes down to those old guard players, right? Like it comes down to your Breeze and Cirque, because they're the ones that showed a little bit more form at the RMR, and I think that's what made them such a deadly team. Obviously, you had Hex playing incredible as well, but if you want this team to be cohesive, you need to have both of them on the scoreboard. And I don't think I've been proven to, at least in terms of the Cirque angle, that this team has enough longevity. However, the Breezy thing, I still think he's got a little bit more in him, but I think I need a little bit more on that AWP, and we can definitely see a world where the AWP of Fluxo could overpower them.
And not even that. I don't like riding off Vertex. They're awesome folks, I'll tell you that. But
I mean, hey, they beat Order to get here for the first time ever in a BO3, so yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, I think they can keep it. They might be able to keep a map decently competitive against 0-0. That'll be a fun series to watch. I believe they are flying across the Pacific Ocean to actually compete in this event as well, which is really, really surprising and really awesome to see. So, yeah,
Who do you think gonna take all this all the way?
On this side of the bracket, it's very
entirely.
I mean, I just want to go out there and say Complexity, but I can see 0-0 Nation doing some serious damage online. I think Dumao didn't deliver to the same degree that most people want him to on LAN. Fine performance at the RMR, completely serviceable, but Not to call him an onliner, but it is a more favorable environment for him.
I'm gonna say 0-0 go ahead and takes it all the way, because I think that coldzera is starting to feel the game a little bit more. I think that his passion for the game is starting to be reignited. I just seeing him just so fired up at the RMR. I mean, I think that this guy is going to lay it all on the table for this little major cycle here, and I think they're going to carry this momentum onwards and upwards, because I liked what I saw from this squad, simply because I think the young core is obviously going to be good, but I think the difference maker has to be coldzera.
For sure.
And he proved himself to me, at least for the time being.
Yeah, coldzera was looking okay as well. I mean, shout outs to him for he's still playing more supportive roles. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he's able to have moments. That's the biggest part about him in 0-0. Moving, keeping it going though, as the light has started shining on my room. We'll go ahead and just go ahead before we wrap this segment up. Pick a team. Who will upset either bracket? Pick a team for you.
I mean, I guess mine is 0-0 on the NA side, just because I don't think that they are favorites. I think complexity definitely is. But on the EU side of things, I really want to say Sangal will just do it, because it's online, and because there's just a potential for some of these players to just have monstrous games. So I'm just going to go with Sangal here.
Okay. For the NA side of the bracket, like, okay, Evil Geniuses winning might not be an upset to get to the finals. I want to say that Fluxo can keep it competitive versus Evil Geniuses. If Evil Geniuses get a clean win over Fluxo, I will say that's going to be a statement win for Evil Geniuses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think Fluxo can seriously pull an upset here. They're not going to run the whole thing, for sure, but they can deal some damage. And for EU, I'll take Eternal Fire. I don't think Astralis has any shit on them. That brings us to the end of this segment. That's our little preview of the Blast Showdowns. I think the Showdowns are always just kind of like an integral part of Counter-Strike, because these very unknown teams, they actually get put on a very big broadcast. And I think that's what I really love about these Showdowns. You get to see some exotic Counter-Strike in them. Specifically, we got to see teams like Lin Vision compete against G2 in days gone by. Now Sharks are making their way back at the NA. Vertex, an Australian team, finally gets to play in one of these events. It's pretty cool. I'd like it.
This is where 9Z got their start as well.
Of course.
With that RPK retirement party of
oh my god, that was a legendary. That is one of the best of threes I've ever watched. It had so many incredible moments. I'll remember that map of Overpass for a long time against Furia that they were playing. Remember that.
But yeah, even though they get blown out of the server in terms of the series wins, it is still exciting to just see interesting ideas. And then sometimes this kind of momentum carries on to just bigger playoff invites to tournaments like CCT, tournaments like Alisa and stuff like that. So it is always going to be a net positive for some of these squads, regardless if they just get battered in that first round.
All right, folks, we're heading down into the home stretch of this podcast, as we'll go ahead and take it to the STONKS segment. Folks, your Showdown investments. We talked a little bit. We talked to our superstars of the RMR. That was Shuhei and I believe I went ahead and picked Brain Needs to Activate here. I picked Cello back then. And he played well as he could with Imperial, just in Fire League. So I'll give myself the pat on the shoulder right there. But let's go ahead and preface those the showdowns with, well, Pally, what are you? Who are you picking for this showdown to come out and surprise us all?
So before we actually picked a player, we decided that we didn't want to pick any of the ones that were relegated from the groups, just because we felt it could be a bit too easy. So we wanted to pick, quote unquote, the underdogs of sorts.
Of course.
In these shows.
Look, they're not gonna win. It would be too easy to just pick a dude from. I was about to say Astralis. Pick a dude from Vitality. No, none of that here. But pick someone from Vitality or. Right. But no, we'll pick an underdog. I think, so someone to look out while you guys are watching.
So I'll carry on with that Sangal storyline that I wanted to talk about, and I think a big proponent of that is Soulfly, and I will pick him as my player to keep an eye on. Yeah, he should have been at the major fight. I didn't actually look at this graphic beforehand. So this is very, very pertaining to how I feel about him. Honestly, in terms of the Eternal Fire situation, maybe you could have thrown him in that conversation instead of Paz. Who knows? But this guy has been grinding it out on this organization for quite some time, about a year and a half now. And alongside Fuzi, they look pretty good. I think that I have seen a lot of good, exciting things from him in particular. And I'm expecting at least him to take it too big and surprise, at least on that rifling role.
I mean, 18 years old. Also, Kyubi is looking okay for this team as well. I think he's gotten a lot of shout outs from people around the scene for his performance at
For
that
sure.
RMR. The same, but certainly Soulfly is the driving force behind this Sangal unit. And I'm excited to see if they can do some damage to Big, who have been looking in better form, I'll say. More contender-like form, perhaps. Either way, my pickup for this Showdown segment is I'll pick up Lotto from 00 Nation. Now, they could go ahead and run the entire bracket, for goodness sakes. They have to take down EG potentially in their wake. But Lotto is one of the most underrated players to ever hit out of Brazil. I think the reason being is he's mostly been competing regionally. Only now is he starting to have his international debuts, specifically under the 00 Nation tag. I think, and he is so impressive in his roles. Think the roles that he plays are so difficult for a 19-year-old, but I think he's had the luxury of developing underneath Taco for nigh on, shoot, how long has Taco been on Godsent for now? I believe maybe 2 years now. He's been underneath Taco's wing back when he was 17 years old, playing on Godsent. Yeah, Taco joined Godsent at the same time as Lotto did. And that is a lot of time to develop, and you can see that he is turning out to be one of Brazil's next best riflers. He has a legacy in front of him, for sure. That's why I pick him.
I think this guy's game sense, for as young as he is just insane. And he's never going to be the flashiest player per se, but I think his understanding of the game at that early on in his career is such a big boon for a player like Taco, who's got a IGL and have so many different moving parts. Lotto's made his life, I'm sure, much easier just because of how easily he's been able to slot into any of these systems. And from the get-go, I definitely had my eye on him. Dumao obviously gets more shine just because of kind of the statistics and the pop-off performances that he has. And yeah, Try, of course. But Lotto is definitely an underappreciated one. It's a great pick here, Fi.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that he's like only positionally as well. He hits bangers too. Of
course. Yeah.
I think he's on 00 Nation by far and away the most talented aimer on that team as well. I think he just maintains his position. He's such a glue player for the unit, and he allows coldzera to play. Man, he just the space that this guy takes allows coldzera to play video games and work his magic as well, that he has been doing as of late. So I think he turns out to be some glue. Any other shout outs to players that you want to toss down the stretch, as we still got a minute and 30 seconds left on this clock in the Stonks section?
I nearly said Breezer, and
what the fuck are you talking about? Who the fuck are you? They're playing against Heroic.
I know. It was a terrible idea. I repented for it before we actually got onto this call.
I forced him to pick someone else.
Yeah. He saved me. He saved my face there, and for that I am eternally grateful.
Yeah. If you pick anyone from Ecstatic, I don't care how good they are. Actually, I mean, there have been some random Danish players who have actually looked okay. I was casting part of the Fire League Global Finals, and Masonic actually looked cracked as hell.
They were hitting some bangers, weren't they?
They were destroying Pain for a moment. Specifically, I just want to highlight a player. It's not like he's in the Showdown or anything of that sort. There's this Danish player who's called Buzz. He was literally just walking up B stairs. I'm straight up alone every round and just double killing the side anchors, because why the hell not? Danish players, not necessarily known for his aim. That guy had some of the most incredible moments. I was talking about like a 180-degree window. If he sees someone on his screen, he's dead. That was what it was like on one of the maps that they were playing.
I think I was really hoping that he would have worked out on Mad Lions or the ex
Yeah,
Mad Lions, but that kind of falling apart. I hope he doesn't fall out of relevancy. Masonic
he's
is
18.
a good lineup to do it. Yeah, and he's got a long career ahead of him. But yeah, that guy deserves some serious chops. I've heard a lot of good things just from Danish players and coaches and staff around the scene. So keep an eye on him for sure. Yeah, it isn't necessarily a showdown player, but it is one to keep in mind for sure. Actually, honestly, we can just like move on to overtime and just talk about the Fire League more or
Yeah.
less here.
Yeah, so we kind of missed out a little bit on the Fire League news that came through. We'll move it back to that particular slide. And talking about the Spirit speed run at the global finals. I had a chance to cast some of these teams and watch some of the games. Team Spirit are like individually said on a good day. I can see why they beat Cloud9.
I am really bummed that Spirit was invited to this tournament because as soon as this invite came through
It's like,
instead of Nouns, I was like, well, what's the point of the tournament at this point? Because
yeah,
they're just gonna blow through the server. And I will argue that Pain showed a very good tournament. They had a very good
good bounce back.
this grindy series against Masonic where they had to like I don't know. I don't think it was necessarily an easy series by any means, especially after how Vertigo ended. And the fact that they were able to bounce back from that and win in what is that double overtime on Ancient in the third, very impressive win for a fledgling lineup with Skulls and Zevi. And then that Imperial win, I felt like was such a good testament to them as kind of the shadowed players in the Brazilian scene among Imperial, right? And winning on Vertigo again, a team that neither of those teams actually enjoyed, and blowing them out of the server. I think that's really cool signs, and keeping it close against Spirit was more than what was expected of them.
Yeah, I think for team, yeah, I mean even just keeping it close. Team Spirit though, they just walked through that tournament, dude. It was they were swimming in the teams basically.
Dude, Patsy with the 1-5-1 at the end of the final.
I'm just saying, like
Can't win.
Patsy's like even then it's so unfair as well. The thing is, Patsy is never really like the craziest aimer because they have everyone else on the team who's hitting headshots. I think generally said he's more of a positional player, you know, just to catch you off guard, more or less. Makes some very good decisions, hits very good timings, but also his secondary opping for this team is basically the equivalent to primary opping. I think that's what makes him so good. Is like he's like. You see, I'm casting these guys, and I see a bunch of op kills run through in the feed, and I'm like, oh man, wonderful, disassembling them, you know, one at a time, and then it's Patsy with a triple kill out, just covering his teammates along. He's so reliable, he's so damn good, and with Wonderful on the books, Wonderful was literally just running around quick scoping people this entire event. It was funny.
Yep. And if you got that guy feeling comfortable, it's just kind of GG, isn't it? Like. That guy isn't even necessarily the most aggressive opper, but he was making his entire identity just look like fake, just with how aggressive he was playing. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, right? Like I can't really recall of any. Oh, ECLNA, that is a big conversation point.
Yeah. Last 2
that
minutes.
That'll actually be starting very soon. We've got MIBR with potential to just breeze through the bracket again, but I will say that there are dark horses that could come out of the woodwork. You've got Team 1, Nouns, ATK, maybe an EG Black, but can MIBR be dethroned? Are they mortal in the CCL bracket?
Yeah, I think in a way they've looked like it. We were talking
It
about
looked really shaky, right?
The honeymoon period that we saw but prior to Pro League, and even then at Pro League, it was still an all right performance. But this RMR crashing out now, even at the Fire League finals, it wasn't really a strong series. They took a map off of 9Z, but 9Z's Ancient is never even that crazy. There are a lot of things to be said. And then they just got rolled on Inferno, just kind of showing them having a very narrow map pool, in my opinion, for MIBR. There are some problems for this team, and I think if we capitalized upon, ATK in particular, is one that needs to. I think we'll move that over here.
I really hope that ATK can perform, man. I casted just a little bit of their cash cup just for funds, And when this team is on, they are so much fun to watch. I wish the best for them. And if they aren't able to qualify, I think roster move has to be made. Or honestly, I think I gave the ultimatum of making the grand final, and I think that that should be the kind of metric. And if not, I don't even know who you take out of this lineup.
The one thing here, they did beat MIBR at the RMR.
They did. So if there is any potential for an upset, it is going to be through this bracket. I don't think that this is a set in stone one for sure. I think there is definitely room for a couple of shakeups to happen here, Fi. I don't think that conference spot is going to come out easy.
Yeah, and I think that's going to bring us to the end of the show, folks, as we have just wrapped up all the news. We are lucky that we came here, started recording just in time for some of the big news to come on through. I think this is a pretty good episode in terms of what we were talking about. I think we kind of varied the topics a little bit more. But next week we have someone special, hopefully, coming on this podcast. Don't want to say who just yet because shit can happen. You see, people think they're trying to build suspense when they do that, but in reality, they have no idea if it's a yay or a nay.
Exactly.
Yet, so.
I mean, we've got a fantastic idea in place, and we've got the potential for something really exciting.
We are in talks with this person.
We are in talks. I wonder if he's even watching right now, because he might be. But if he's not, that's okay. That'll be a great little surprise for tomorrow, for next week's podcast. So look out for that. We are changing up the format a little bit more. There might be a couple of graphical overhauls here or there. I know Fi's tweaking up with some ideas. So yeah, I think that we are heading in a good direction. I know we said that last week, but you know,
things
Fi's
happen.
got casting. Fi's got the casting to do. I've got content to make.
Look at these bags underneath my eyes. They Gucci.
All right. That's all from us, though. I mean, I'm looking forward to next week, Fi.
All right. I'm looking out for next week, too. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. This has been episode 12 of the NA podcast. We'll catch you